What is up, Dynasty Leaguers? Welcome back into another DLF YouTube channel video. Today, we are going to be talking about specifically the running back position, these rookie running backs that were drafted or undrafted from the 2021 NFL Draft, just kind of running through the position. Guys I really like, guys I'm not so high on after the NFL Draft, just kind of trying to wade through these waters a little bit because, you know, we only saw 4 running backs being taken on days 1 and day 2. A lot of these guys were day 3 guys. And then we have another whole group of undrafted free agents that have found landing spots, some still unsigned. But there's a lot to go through with this rookie running back class because rookie running backs generally are very predictable in terms of at least having success in year 1 or down the road just a couple years. They're usually the targets that I like to go for whenever I'm building out my dynasty leagues and rosters, because I know that I feel like I can trust them a little bit more to have early production than the wide receiver position. So that's why they are really important to me, and that's why I like to go through my analysis of the running back position. So that's what we're going to be running through today. We're going to be looking at all of the sum of my markers that I was talking about pre-draft, now that we have everything, including 40-yard dash from everybody's pro days, speed scores, and now finally draft capital. We can talk about these players with a full sum of all 8 potential markers from my analysis and talk about this 2021 class through that lens. So with that all being said, guys, let's get right into the video. So first, I want to hit on at least the running backs that were drafted initially. So I want to talk about these 19 rookie running backs that were drafted in the NFL Draft in 2021 from rounds 1 through 7. Like I said at the beginning, only 4 of these running backs were drafted in either the first, second, or third round, in Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, and then Trey Sermon rounding out the final, the end of the third round. Then a lot of these other guys, 15 other running backs were taken on day 3. And then we have a whole nother group of 20 plus running backs that were undrafted. But I wanted to touch on, at least initially, the players that were drafted, specifically talking about how we can wade through the waters of, potentially the top 5, 6, or maybe 7 running backs in this class, because there's a very steep drop off after about 4 or maybe even 5. So let's get right into it here. I pulled out all of the drafted players from this class, have a whole entire table with all of their stuff and their final markers. The markers, just to remind you guys, this is my personal analysis of historically what other really good and elite running backs have done in the NFL coming out of college, just what they have in common in terms of measurables, draft capital, speed, all of that stuff coming out of college. So the 8 markers that you can potentially hit on is 1, being 200 pounds or more, 2, a BMI at or above 30 BMI, a best reception season of 25 receptions or more. That's in one single season. I want to see early collegiate production, and by that I'm looking for 1,000 or more yards from scrimmage in either your freshman or your sophomore season, a career yards per carry in college over 6, a 40-yard dash at 4.60 or less, and a speed score over 100, which speed score is a formula that accounts for your weight and your speed and kind of gives everybody a similar score and a more normalized score in terms of speed relative to your weight. Then finally, the draft capital. I'm looking for first or second round draft capital, and that rounds out all 8 of my markers that I'm looking for from these rookie running backs. I don't really care about age. Obviously, I would prefer a guy that's 21 over a guy that's 24 if they're relatively equal. But there's a lot of other stuff that goes into it, and I'm really looking at these markers for these rookie running backs coming in. So those are my 8 markers, and we can now talk about this 2021 class from that marker standpoint. So at the top of the list, hitting 8 for 8 markers, is Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne analytically is the best prospect in this class. David Wilsey, who's done a lot of work with running backs and rookie running back prospects all the way back to 2005. This is where a lot of this data is coming from, as well as Peter Howard. But David has been very adamant that Travis Etienne is the best running back in this class, and he is his RB1. I feel like a lot of people pre-draft really soured on Travis Etienne. The draft process film-wise wasn't necessarily the best for him. A lot of people really bumped up Najee Harris to being the clear-cut RB1, which I still believe, and myself included. I still believe and still have Najee Harris as my clear-cut RB1 in this class. But Travis Etienne has presented himself at being kind of a value right now. On DLF, and we pull MFL rookie drafts, and for Superflex, I looked at Travis Etienne's ADP. He's currently being taken anywhere from the 1.06 all the way down to the 110 as the RB2 or 3 off the board. Some people kind of like the Jaguars landing spot. Other people don't necessarily like the Jaguars landing spot, but in terms of what Travis Etienne brings to the table coming out of college, he hits on all 8 markers, which is not a very easy feat to do. Only a handful of other players have done that historically since 2005. These guys include Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, Joe Mixon, Ezekiel Elliott, D'Angelo Williams, and Marshawn Lynch. The worst player on this list is Sony Michel, at least in terms of NFL production. You know, it remains to be seen with Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift, but there's a lot more hope for those two than what we've already seen out of Sony Michel. And so that at least is a very, very good comp list for Travis Etienne to come in and be a very, very good, potentially elite stud running back in the NFL. The only real major risk, and I think one of his biggest pitfalls, is the question of what does Urban Meyer do? And I know that quote has been thrown around a lot in terms of Urban Meyer seeing Travis Etienne more as a third down back, and then, you know, Carlos Hyde and James Robinson are more of the first and second down 1-2 punch, Etienne being the third down PPR reception kind of a guy. I don't buy into that. I don't buy into that narrative at all. You don't draft a running back in the first round to be a first round guy. You especially don't draft your top 1.01 quarterback with his best running back from college as well, if you're not going to treat him more as what they did at Clemson. So I really buy into Travis Etienne succeeding and being the main guy in this Jacksonville Jaguars offense. You can think of him more along the lines of how it took Alvin Kamara to get associated into the New Orleans Saints offense with Mark Ingram still being there. It took a few weeks, but then eventually he got going. I think another good comp would be DeAndre Swift, who last year, you know, had it really rough with, you know, trying to beat out Adrian Peterson and Kerryon Johnson, but then eventually, you know, was still the PPR, you know, receptions kind of a guy. That's where he made his heyday, at least early on in 2020, but then eventually worked his way into being much more of a workhorse, getting the red zone role, you know, getting the between the 20s role. And I think that's what Travis Etienne is going to actually end up looking like for 2021, and eventually capturing that full 3-down workhorse role by the end of the year with a lot of hype and expectations heading into 2022. So that, at least, I really, really like Travis Etienne. I think he does present a value in your rookie drafts, even being the RB2 off the board. He's going behind a lot of the quarterbacks in Superflex. He's going behind, you know, Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts even in one quarterback leagues, and behind Najee Harris. I really, really like Travis Etienne, and at least historically, he comps very well to a lot of other very successful and elite running backs in the NFL. Second on this list here is Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams comes in hitting on 7 out of the 8 markers. The only one that he actually missed on was speed score. He ran a 4.6 40-yard dash at his pro day, and at his given 212-pound weight, did not hit the 100 threshold that I'm looking for at speed score. But that's the only thing that he misses on in terms of all of these markers, or else he would also be an 8 for 8 kind of a guy. He hits on BMI. He's perfect size. He had a 25 reception season at North Carolina just this past year. He had the early production in his sophomore year at 1,100 total yards, over 6 yards from scrimmage. In terms of everything else, film-wise, he's a fantastic prospect in terms of broken tackle rate and being able to get explosive carries and runs into the next level. All of that stuff is awesome for Javonte Williams. And I also really like the Denver Broncos landing spot for him too, because I think it offers, again, also a discount for Javonte Williams, because people say, well, Melvin Gordon is there. He's not going to do a lot in year one. I agree. I don't really expect a whole lot in year one. He might end up being some sort of a flex play on any given week. Maybe he gets more down the road. But then Melvin Gordon is a free agent after 2021. In 2022, Melvin Gordon should not be on this Denver Broncos team. And so I expect Javonte Williams to be fully in line for 3-down workload capabilities. The Denver Broncos general manager and more have said that they believe Javonte Williams can do that. And so this is kind of like a Derrick Henry being behind DeMarco Murray situation at Tennessee, where you're just kind of waiting for him to actually get that chance. And given that they invested and traded up for him at the beginning of the second round, tells me that they want to do that with Javonte Williams. So I really, really like him as well. He is my RB3 in this class, though he's really not that far behind Travis Etienne as my RB2. And I really, really like Javonte Williams, and I would be targeting him a lot more than all the other wide receivers in that same tier. You're talking about like Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, all those other kind of guys that fit in that back end of the first kind of second wide receiver tier after Jamar Chase. I'm going after Javonte Williams. I like him a lot. So I'm going to skip over, at least for now, all these other players that round out, with Kenneth Gainwell, Michael Carter, Elijah Mitchell, all of those guys who come in next throughout the markers, because I want to talk about Najee Harris. I want to talk about him because, at least in terms of these markers, he does not look all that fantastic. He only hits on 4 of these markers, at least in terms of what we know right now. He hits on weight, just barely misses on BMI. Hit on receptions. He just had a 43 reception season last year at Alabama. Misses on early production in terms of yards from scrimmage in his freshman and sophomore year. Hits on yards per carry. Misses on 40 and speed score because he did not run a 40 or do any of that stuff at the pro day. So when you look at all of that on the surface, Najee Harris is a 4 out of 8 prospect on my markers. But when you take everything else into account, I've said in the past, and I said in his profile video back in April or March, that I give Najee Harris a pass on his early production. I give him a pass for not having over 1,000 yards in his freshman or sophomore year because he was behind other great running backs at Alabama and another first-round running back in Josh Jacobs, but then also Bo Scarborough and Damian Harris. I give him a pass for that because in that Alabama offense specifically, but then also just because of the nature of the running back position, there's generally only one running back who really gets the workload. Or, like in North Carolina, it's Javonte Williams and Michael Carter both sharing the workload. Javonte Williams was able to do well still. But Najee Harris coming in as like the RB4 his freshman year, RB3 his sophomore year, then finally getting that workload in his junior and senior year. I give him a pass for that. And I would probably just give him that marker, just say that he's a 5 out of 8 guy in terms of his freshman production, because if one of those guys wasn't there, I bet he would have probably hit that. Even if Bo Scarborough or Damian Harris or Josh Jacobs wasn't there, he would hit that 1,000 yard marker. And if 2 of those guys, or even all 3 of them, weren't there, and he was an early season starter in his college career like Travis Etienne was, a full 4-year starter, he would be so far and away smashing that marker that I'd give him the pass for that. That would make him a 5 out of an 8 marker guy. I also give him a pass for the 40-yard dash and the speed score. I don't think he ran that just because he didn't feel like he had to. He knew he was going to be a first-round pick or at least an early second-round pick. He knew he was going to be either the first or second running back off the board. You're not drafting Najee Harris for Travis Etienne-like speed, but I do think that he would have came in at least a sub 4.6, and at his 230 pounds, he would have needed to run a 4.57 or 4.58 in order to hit a 100 speed score. So if he did that, then we're talking about a 7 out of an 8 marker guy in Najee Harris. The only thing that he was really missing on is BMI, which even that is at a 29.5. I'm looking for a 30. If he was just a couple more pounds or an inch taller, he'd be right there. So I don't knock him down at all for that either. Najee Harris is a fantastic prospect. Like I said, he's my RB1 in this class. He goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who immediately is going to give him at least 300 touches in his rookie year moving on. We can talk about that offensive line. But, James Conner was fine last year. He at least had over 4 yards per carry. Didn't have a whole lot of a workload, but that's just kind of James Conner and his injuries and whatnot. And they didn't really have a whole lot going for them in the running game. Najee Harris can come in and be that guy. He can be a 20-touch guy every single week. And just on that pure volume, he's going to get it done for you in fantasy football as at least an RB2, a top 15 running back guy with RB1 upside. So I really like Najee Harris. I'm not worried about him long term as a 23-year-old. He is my RB1 in this class, and I just wanted to touch on and talk about why he is only a 4 out of an 8 marker guy, but kind of give a little bit more context into that 4 out of 8 markers for him. So then we can talk about, now that the first, I think, tier of running backs has finished out, we can talk about these rest of the guys, RB4 through however many more. RB4 for me is Michael Carter. He landed in the beginning of the 4th round to the New York Jets, which I really like, because I think that he could be immediately the starting running back. I think he can beat out Tevin Coleman, who's not that great. He can beat out LaMichael Pirine. Michael Carter is a very good running back. He would have been my RB5 pre-draft. He comes in as my RB4 post-draft. I really like Michael Carter as a lighter version of Javonte Williams. I really like what he can bring to the table. Obviously, he's a 5 out of an 8 type of a guy. He, like Javonte Williams, hit on 40-yard dash, did not hit on speed score, didn't necessarily have that early production because he was sharing it with Javonte Williams, but then also hits on receptions with 25, hits on BMI, hits on weight, and then obviously missed on draft capital as well. But he is a solid 5 out of an 8 marker guy. He's my RB4 in this class. I really like him a lot, and I'd be targeting him a lot at the top of my 2nd rounds in Superflex or at the mid to back end of the 1st round in 1 quarterback leagues. After that, for me, I think it gets pretty dicey here. A lot of people would probably have Trey Sermon as their RB4 or at least their RB5. I'm not a huge Trey Sermon fan. He comes in as the 3 out of an 8 marker guy. He was the only other running back drafted outside of the big 3 on day 2, drafted at the end of the 3rd round to the San Francisco 49ers. I really don't like Trey Sermon. I never really have. I don't really get all the hype that comes out of him. I know Matt Waldman really loves Trey Sermon, and I've listened to him and understood all the stuff that Waldman really likes with Sermon, but like he didn't hit on 25 reception season. He was 4.62 40-yard dash guy, which is only a 94 speed score at his 215-pound weight. So he's under BMI as well, and like he is really close on a lot of the other stuff. So he just as easily could be a 5, 6, 7 out of 8 guy, but like it's hard for me to like a guy like Trey Sermon. And I think he's going to get propped up because of his landing spot. And I don't know. Like I'm not on board with the Trey Sermon hype. I would rather pass on him and target guys like Kenneth Gainwell, who I think landed in a decent spot with Philadelphia. He can take over the RB2 role over Boston Scott, play that role. But then if Miles Sanders gets hurt, potentially even when Miles Sanders gets hurt, because he's had injury problems in terms of not being able to play all 16 or 17 games, missing a few here and there, I think Gainwell could be a really good backup handcuff type of a stash to target later in your rookie drafts. He comes in as a 6 out of 8 marker type of a guy, missing on draft capital and also BMI because he is a little bit smaller. He's only 5'11", 201 pounds. Those are the only 2 things that he misses on. I was really hoping that he would have the draft capital, maybe not 2nd round, but at least 3rd, maybe 4th. Slid to the 5th to Philly. I still really like Kenneth Gainwell and what he can bring to the table. 2,000 yards from scrimmage really early on at Memphis, was the guy that prevented Antonio Gibson from getting more workload. He's that good. I think he is a very good, talented running back, and I think that he can do well as a late round dart throw in your rookie drafts. Another guy I want to mention is Chuba Hubbard, a 3 out of an 8 marker guy, just like Trey Sermon. And also just like Trey Sermon, comes in really close with a lot of these other markers. He did hit on 40-yard dash with a 4.53, just barely missed on speed score to 99.74. I'm looking for 100. If you want to round that up, you can. 5.91 yards per carry, so just barely missed the 6 threshold. 23 reception, best season, barely misses the 25 threshold. 28.5 BMI. It's just a lot went so well for Chuba early on at Oklahoma State, then a lot went so bad for him last year. It's really weird in terms of just his college years and his career. Not really sure what all to do with him. Lands as the 4th round pick to the Carolina Panthers, so at least in terms of fantasy, he's a straight backup to Christian McCaffrey. But we know that role is very viable. Mike Davis was an RB2 last year. with Christian McCaffrey only playing 3 games. And I think that's what you can probably expect from Chuba Hubbard if Christian McCaffrey gets hurt again. I'm not really saying that it's possible or that he will. I think all of that stuff for CMC last year was kind of fluky and freak injury accidents. But if that does happen, Hubbard, I think, is a very primary handcuff. I think he can land himself kind of more in the valuation of other guys like that, like Alexander Mattison, Latavius Murray, Tony Pollard, guys like that who can, be a really, really good running back if their starter goes down at all. But their main, depth chart piece is as a backup running back. And that's kind of where Hubbard falls in. And that's where I'm treating him as such. I also like him as a late round type of a guy in your rookie drafts, late second, early third, stuff like that, just to grab a guy if you need to, if you're not able to trade out of that pick. I like what Chuba Hubbard can bring to the table. The final guy that I want to touch on, at least in terms of the players that were drafted, we talked about Trey Sermon being the 3rd round pick to the San Francisco 49ers. They also decided to go with one of my favorite players in this draft in terms of late round guys, in Elijah Mitchell in the 6th round. They drafted Elijah Mitchell 3 rounds after they drafted Trey Sermon, and I would much rather go after Elijah Mitchell than Trey Sermon, especially given that the price difference is going to be a lot higher. We're looking at Trey Sermon as an early 2nd round pick in Superflex, whereas Elijah Mitchell could go anywhere from mid-3rd to 4th round. I've seen him in my personal DLF Champions Cup rookie draft that's going on right now. He was a mid-3rd round pick going in that draft. And so I really like just that discount. I think Elijah Mitchell is a better running back. That might be kind of a hot take, but I think Mitchell is the better running back. I see this very similarly as what I saw the Green Bay Packers depth chart back in 2017 when they drafted Jamal Williams first and then Aaron Jones later to go with their depth chart. The Niners' depth chart, at least coming in, is a little bit different because they still have Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson and whatnot, but that depth chart is one that I feel like any of those running backs can quickly ascend between the 2 veterans and the 2 rookies that just came in. We know that whoever Kyle Shanahan puts back there is going to be fantasy viable. And so I want to take the shot on Elijah Mitchell at that price difference between him and Trey Sermon, just in case something were to happen. Because like I said, I do believe that Elijah Mitchell is the better running back. So I'm going to take that shot on a guy like that over, the guy who I think is getting propped up a little bit because of draft capital and landing spot. Kind of similar to what we saw with Keyshawn Vaughn last year being taken by the Buccaneers. That's at least my personal point of view. Y'all can have your own opinion, but that's kind of how I see it. So then we can also switch to the undrafted free agents just real quickly. This is what the undrafted free agents look like. It's really interesting to see a guy like Deion Jackson being a 6 out of an 8 marker guy. The unfortunate thing for him was that he signed with the Indianapolis Colts. So depth chart wise, not really sure what's going on there because, you're going to be behind Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack, who re-signed a 1-year deal. So at least that type of a role and situation isn't going to be there initially for Deion Jackson. But it is interesting that he comes in as a 6 out of an 8 type of a guy without the draft capital. Another couple guys on this list, Jarrett Patterson, I know is an interesting name for a lot of people with that early production coming out of Buffalo. Just recently signed with the Washington football team, so maybe a name to watch. One other guy is Javian Hawkins, Louisville running back. I know a bunch of these guys are like 1, 2, and 3 marker type of players, so these are really long shots just in general. But Javian Hawkins signed with the Atlanta Falcons, who kind of like the San Francisco 49ers, that depth chart is really kind of up in the air. They signed Mike Davis as a free agent. They have Brian Hill, I think, still there. Ito Smith is gone. But then Javian Hawkins kind of slides in here as an interesting piece. He, doesn't really hit that well on speed score, yards per carry, had the early production, didn't really have the receptions, doesn't have BMI. He is a smaller back at 5'8", 183 pounds. So I'm not really sure what to expect for Javian Hawkins, but I know a lot of people are calling him the potential James Robinson in this class in terms of being an undrafted free agent in a really murky depth chart that he could possibly ascend in, maybe even with injury as well. And just kind of a name to keep on your radar, though I wouldn't necessarily be spending a 3rd round pick on any of these guys. I think that's kind of negative EV, and I don't think you should be spending 3rd round picks on undrafted free agents when other potential, even wide receivers that were drafted on day 2 would still be there. But these are just names to monitor in case you're in your 4th round. You want to take you know, a dart throw, 5th round dart throw. Maybe these guys don't even get drafted in your rookie drafts, and you guys can throw these on your taxi squad. Just a couple names to monitor from the undrafted side of this rookie running back class. So that's going to do it for today's video. I'm sorry this went a little bit longer, with like 25 minutes for this video, but I think that there is, even though this is a shallow running back depth chart and running back class, I really do think that there is some stuff that we can talk about with these guys. There are some high-end pieces that I really like. Some other guys that I like as dart throws or more backup handcuff type of running backs, instead of taking shots on some of these other wide receivers. Speaking of wide receivers, we will get to those on Friday. I'm going to do kind of a similar video on those guys, talking through all their analytics and whatnot, discussing guys that got propped up by draft capital in day 2, guys that fell. So that could be a really interesting video as well for some of y'all who might still be waiting for your rookie drafts to go, or maybe in the middle of them and you're kind of deciding, you're waiting. So we're getting all that content out to you guys as we go along here. So thank you so much for tuning in, sticking with me through this whole entire video. We'll catch you guys later.